Hello, everyone. So I'll be talking about some things that you've already heard about with chimpanzees and our warlike cousins, things that they do. And Richard set the stage very nicely by talking about some of these things. I'll go over some of the basic findings and then talk about some new work that's currently in progress. So as you know, chimpanzees live in multi-male, multi-female societies with fission-fusion social dynamics. And intergroup killings and within-group killings have been observed since the 1970s. This is a photo that David Beigot took of the very first intergroup killing that was observed in chimpanzees, which was an infanticide. And chimpanzees also sometimes kill members of their own groups. This is a male from the K group in Mahale being, he was the alpha male of his community, and he was assassinated by the other members of his group. And this raises a very interesting puzzle of, when we're thinking about warfare and intergroup aggression, having as many males as possible in your own group is very important for your coalitionary strength and being able to win. So this question of why you would ever take out one of your own males, thereby weakening your own coalitionary strength, is an interesting puzzle. Mortality in chimpanzees from other chimpanzees, conspecific mortality, constitutes about 20% of all the causes of death that we can identify, at least at Gombe National Park, where we have long-term data on, quite good data on causes of death. Disease kills more chimpanzees than anything else, but aggression, both intra-community, within community aggression, and between community aggression, accounts for a substantial proportion of mortality. And if we compare that to mortality in small-scale human societies, hunter-gatherers and horticultural small-scale horticulturalists, the best estimates that we have show really quite similar levels of percent of all deaths that have been caused by conspecific violence. So here in blue we have intra-group killings, and in red we have intergroup killings, and sum them together both for humans and chimpanzees, and it's around 12% of deaths of known cases, and in both humans and chimpanzees, there's a similar level of that's due to within-group killing versus intergroup killing. And as Richard described the other day, the kind of best adaptive explanation for why chimpanzees do this, which has been developed by Wrangham and colleagues over the years, is that socio-ecological factors create opportunities for low-cost killings, because chimpanzees they rely on ripe fruit, which is an unpredictable food supply, so they are in parties that vary in size depending on the availability of food, because this results in intense scramble competition, so parties vary in size depending on how much food is around, and this creates opportunities for lethal raiding and the evolution of a belligerent temperament. And over the past few years, I've worked with colleagues from all of the long-term chimpanzee and bonobo study site. Bonobos are the other species of pan, to develop a data set of killings to get a better understanding of how often these occur and what are some factors that might help explain why these killings occur. And so with data from study sites across Africa, looking at 99 different killings from 18 different chimpanzee communities, most of these killings were done by males. Males are the main killers. 92% of the participants in killings were males, and most of the victims were male, and the majority of these killings were intergroup killings. And they usually occurred in cases of overwhelming numerical superiority. So just looking at the intergroup cases, the ratio of attackers to defenders was on average 8-1. Now there's also a lot of interesting variation among these 18 chimp sites. The bonobo sites are also here in B, but there's not much interesting variation there because they don't kill. Among these chimpanzee study sites, there's a lot of variation. In some places there's a lot of killing, in other places there's not very much. And one explanation that people have had is that, well, maybe chimpanzees are killing each other because, well, at Gombe, Jane Goodall fed them bananas for a number of years, and maybe that caused something strange to happen. So the sites where artificial feeding or provisioning has taken place are indicated by Ps, and when we look at this statistically, there's really no evidence that a history of provisioning explains the variation that we see. There are sites with no provisioning where killings take place, sites with lots of killing that have never been provisioned. But instead, based on the kind of coarse-grained analyses that we've been able to do across all these sites, the correlates that explain more of the variation are population density and number of males. And the greatest number of killings, the highest rate of killings, are in the Ngogo community, which is also the largest chimpanzee community that's been studied, with something close over 200 individuals. So it's not bananas. So focusing in more detail on what's happening within communities, there are some interesting questions about why, if you're a chimpanzee, why would you go to the borders, given that in the border areas there's higher risk of encountering the neighbors? What are some reasons you might do that? And some possible explanations are, first of all, that it has a lot to do with the balance of power. What Richard has talked about is the impunity of coalitions. If the balance of power is against you, you should avoid the borders. You shouldn't go to places where the neighbors are really powerful. But if you know that the neighbors are weak, then you should visit there and try to weaken them further if you can, expand your territory against them at their expense. People have also proposed that chimpanzees are very interested in finding new females, and that they may go into these border areas in order to recruit new females. And this is something that it's been proposed, and it's kind of been out there in the literature for a long time, and it looks similar to what we know humans are very interested in doing. But it's also the case that in chimpanzees, females usually emigrate on their own at sexual maturity, and so whether female migration movements are influenced by male activities is something that remains a bit uncertain. And it could be that they're going to borders primarily to look for food, that chimpanzees may seek to drive competitors away from important food resources and expand their territory into areas where there is a lot of food. And so over the years, I've worked to try to test some of these questions, and one thing that we found is that male chimpanzees are very sensitive to the number of males that they're with in terms of their ranging behavior. So this is looking at the number of adult males in parties that either stayed in the core of their range at Kanyawara in Kibale, about 3 males is the median party size, versus days when the party visited the periphery of their range. Those parties had about twice as many males, about 6 males. So they're not going to the edge unless they are relatively safe. And I tested this experimentally using playback experiments where in each experiment we simulated the intrusion of a single male using the pant hoot call, a loud long-distance call from a foreign male. We played one of these calls and saw how they responded. And the response depended very much on the number of males who were in the listening party. So the more males who were in the listening party, the more likely they were to approach, and the more likely they were to give a loud vocal response. And looking at actual encounters, some years later, we went back and looked through all the long-term data on intergroup encounters from Kanyawara, and we found a very similar pattern in that the more males there were, the greater the probability was of approaching a distant call and vocalizing in response to that. These curves rise a bit later, probably because in these cases, in real intergroup encounters, there are going to be more males on the opposing side as well, so the risk of approaching them is higher. In chimpanzees, most intergroup encounters are shouting matches, where individuals are hundreds of meters away, they can't see each other, they hear a call in the distance, they may or may not give a call back in response. This is a map of the Kanyawara range showing the core and the periphery, and the open circles are acoustic interactions. Occasionally they come within visual range, which are the gray circles. Occasionally they have a physical interaction, and infrequently there's an actual death. So the rate of death per encounter is pretty low. Most of these are distant interactions. But looking at this figure, we can see that there's an interesting patterning. The intergroup encounters are really clustered down here in the southeast, and it turns out that appears to be driven mainly by a single key food source, Euvaryopsis, which is a tree that produces that grows in groves. It's very seasonal, produces abundant fruit during certain times of the year, and that attracts chimpanzees from both sides of this border down here to come feed in this area, and that's when that fruit is abundant is when a large proportion of these intergroup interactions occur. Looking now at Gombe National Park in Tanzania, we have an even longer term history of the population. We know a lot about what's been going on over the years, and the main study community that Jane Goodall has been studying since 1960 is the Kasekela community. There was a fission in the 1970s where the Kahama community separated, and then the Kasekela chimpanzees killed the males, and one of the females in the Kahama community expanded into their range, but were soon driven back north by the Kalande community, which was not habituated to observers but was appeared to be large and powerful at the time. But over the years, the Kalande community has been weakened and gone into quite a severe decline, and the Matumba community in the north, which also was relatively large and powerful, has also declined in size, and Kasekela has taken over much of the park. And so trying to tease apart why chimpanzees go to borders, what they're looking for, what they're doing. In Gombe, it's a little bit of a simple situation because the borders are either to the south or the north. And that can tell us something about why they're going to these borders. Are they going north or south? And this is a plot of all the intergroup interactions per month from 1973 to 2007. And these are the interactions towards the south. And in the 70s, there were lots of interactions towards the south. After the extinction of the Kahama community, there were lots of interactions with the Kalande community coming up from the south. But by the 90s, the Kalande community was in decline, and very few interactions were recorded with them. Whereas during the 90s, the number of interactions with the Matumba community really increased quite a bit going into the 2000s. And around this time, the Matumba community also began its decline, became a smaller community. So if we look at what's driving, why do they go north versus south? Is it for food or females? The number of patrols in the 2000s has really been focused to the north. When they go on a border patrol, they're going north much more often. We know from genetics where all of the females are coming from, because we've been able to genotype even the unhabituated chimpanzees in the population because of an ongoing study looking at disease ecology of SIV. And during this time frame, very few of the females immigrated from the north. Most of the females that immigrated came from the south, where they were putting in very little intergroup effort. So it looks like they're not putting their patrol effort into where the females are coming from. Instead, they're putting their patrolling effort into where the food is. And we've conducted vegetation plots across the whole of the park so we can estimate how much food is on the ground in these different places. And so these bars show the density of food trees that chimpanzees eat the fruit or leaves of, and the density of smaller food plants. And this is much higher in Mitumba than in Kalande. And we can show that in more detail with this plot of this surface area of food abundance. There's just not much food in the south, either in the wet or the dry season, compared to the north. So in terms of resource competition, the Kasakela males really concentrated their territorial effort towards the north, where there was food, rather than to the south, where there were females. So looking at this question of allies and competitors, in chimpanzees, for the males, individual reproductive success really depends on the strength of the male coalition. They need a big community a large number of males to defend their territory. Large groups are more likely to win. Winners are more likely to gain territory. But individual reproductive success also depends on competition within the group. And that competition can get very severe. Males compete for access to parous females when they're fertile, and the highest ranking males get more fertilizations. And so there's tension between these goals. And so to speed through this a little bit, at Mitumba, in this small community where there were only 3 males, the alpha male was injured in a fall, and if their main goal was maintaining their coalition size, what the 2 other males should have done was made him a nice bed and brought him food. Instead, they beat him up. He went into exile for a few months, and when they found him again, they killed him, which in terms of intergroup behavior seems quite stupid. And since then, the remaining 2 males have been duking it out viciously between themselves and also killing off the younger males. So Ebony was found dead, clearly killed by chimpanzees. Rudy was severely attacked by Edgar. He's now disappeared, presumed dead. Forrest, severely attacked by both Edgar and Rudy. He's disappeared, presumed dead. Apple, who I saw just last summer, he was alive and doing fine. He's since been attacked and severely injured and is killed. So it looks like the remaining large adult male in Mitumba is trying to maintain all the matings for himself. So we see intergroup killings at a number of other sites, but there are costs to doing this. And one of the costs is this infant Andromeda was killed during an incursion by the Kasakela community. We know that Edgar was the father, so if maybe he had more male allies, he could have prevented that incursion. And what I think is going on here is that these males are really competing intensively for paternities. Vincent, the alpha male, monopolized females very effectively before he was killed. After he was killed, the 2 remaining males were able to split the paternities between them. These males are not unusually aggressive compared to Kasakela, so the overall rates of aggression aren't especially high, just baseline aggression, but they seem to be, the lethal aggression seems to be happening at a higher rate. And the alpha male at Mitumba is much more effective at monopolizing paternities than in Kasakela. There's quite a bit more reproductive skew in Kasakela. There are more females, and it's just harder for any one male to obtain all the matings. So in conclusion, chimpanzees and humans in small-scale societies have really quite similar rates of death from violence, and chimpanzees kill members of other groups when they have an overwhelming numerical advantage. Chimpanzee intergroup competition appears to be driven mainly by competition for food, not for females. Males do sometimes kill members of their own group, and that appears to be driven mainly by competition for females within groups. And so there are many funding sources to thank, but I especially want to thank the many people who have contributed data to this data set of killings, and also the large number of people at Gombe and elsewhere who have worked hard to follow chimpanzees and collect these data. So thank you. Yes, Polly.
When a human is killed, the pain is enormous, and it has a lot to do with perpetuating violence. I've watched elephants, and it seems that when an elephant is killed, the other elephants are really sad. What is the response of chimps when a chimp is killed?
Well, after Vincent was killed, he was killed in the evening, right before sundown, and they radioed down to Kasakela and told me about it. So I went up before dawn the next day, went to the side of his body and waited to see what would happen, because the other chimps had nested nearby. And I thought they might come and approach the body, examine it. We waited for them to wake up. They woke up. They started feeding on some fruits that were growing on vines, and then went about their business. Not a bit. Yes.
So you talked about that the breaking up the coalition strength, or looking for the individual kind of sacrificing coalition strength. Do you have any sense or data of going the other way, where there's actually a backing off of aggression to preserve coalition strength?
So for example, not killing a weakened alpha male in order to, not really. There's, it seems that when alpha males become vulnerable, they are, it's not unusual for this kind of severe attack to happen. There was one kind of anecdote that relates here, though, when Freud was overthrown as alpha male, it looked like there was, the other males might carry out a gang attack on him, and his brother Frodo behaved in a way that appeared he was protecting his brother. So there might be some kin selection going on.
So there seems to be an upper bound beyond which chimps and humans will not go in terms of how many people in their group they'll kill. Do you have any theories about why that's the case?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think there are a lot of risks involved in killing members of your own group. If you think about the rate of killing per encounter with a stranger versus a group member, you encounter your own group members nearly every day. You hardly ever kill them. Occasionally you do. Whereas you almost never encounter members of other groups, but when you do, if you can, you kill them if you're a chimpanzee or if you're a shoot-on-sight kind of person. So I think it's these within-group killings depend on some kind of special circumstances. So a lot of them are infanticides, which have their own kind of complex set of reasons for occurring. And these killings of adult males, it's really hard to kill another adult male with your hands and teeth if you're by yourself. So, it really only works, it works most easily if there's an uprising against that male, and you can get lots of helpers, and that seems to occur rarely for whatever reason.
Thanks, Mike. Great talk. So it seems like you think this is about food and territory containing food. In the Kasakela community, the range size from 1980 to 2000 increased by 3 times or something, it looks like. If food is the constraining factor, and the population size was the same.
The number of males is the same anyway.
Okay. So if food is a constraining factor, how can they tolerate such a massive increase and decrease in territory size at the same population size?
Well, times were hard for them when the territory size was small. So we have body weights for over 30 years. And Pusey and colleagues have found that that controlling for age and reproductive state and season, there's an association between territory size and body mass. They were really kind of skinny and hungry when they had the very small territory size. Yes, the interbirth interval is longer when territory size is small as well.
Thank you very much.